So first of all, I'd like to introduce the members of staff who are in the room, which is 3 of us. I'm Rachel O'Neill, and I'm the Pathway Coordinator for the Deaf Education Pathway. And I work in Charterers Land, the building which is the other side of the road. And Elizabeth, do you want to just come to the front a little bit so that you can be seen?
Hello, I'm Elizabeth McCann. I'm the tutor for students who are coming on the pathway for visual impairment.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm tethered.
Oh, right.
Just hold up both of them.
hold.
Hold on both of them. That's all right.
I'm based across in Charterers, but I only work 3 days a week. And mostly you'll find me within Scottish Sensory Centre because I also have a desk in there, so I've got a dual role. So if you're on the pathway for visual impairment, you'll see quite a lot of me.
Thank you. And Marie, are you okay about coming up to the front? I'll hold this. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marie Hamilton, Programme Secretary for both Pathways and the full-time Masters students. I work in Thompson's Land, which is this building over here. I've already spoken to some of you on the phone and had email exchanges and
Thank you very much. Thanks, Marie. And for those of you who are watching online, please, I've had 2 people text in already to say that they're here. That's very helpful for us because everyone who is here, we're going to mark you present from today. And so text in if you're watching this online, or even if you're watching it later, and then we'll be able to activate your student. You know, we'll say that you've attended. So do we have a list that we could send around? Elizabeth, could you send around my notebook maybe, or have you got a VI list, or is it a complete list? Oh, great, sorry. Okay, so there's a register going round, and the people who are watching online, please just text in on the number that I gave you. And here is the number. So the number is 0796 166 1788. That's just that's my own mobile. But for today, you can text in to say that you're here, but also text in any questions you have. And Elizabeth's monitoring it so that we will, between us, answer the questions as they come up. And that's true for all of you too. Please answer the questions. Ask any questions you want. So, first of all, welcome. You've chosen to come to the University of Edinburgh for your postgraduate diploma, most of you, because most of you, I think all of you, are aiming to become a teacher of deaf children or a teacher of visually impaired children. And in fact, in most cases, you are currently working with those groups. There are other levels of this qualification, as Marie mentioned, and at the lower level, 60 credits, there is a certificate, but it hasn't got any particular pathway attached to it. It's just a general inclusive education certificate of 60 credits. And then if you want to carry on, after you've got your diploma, we would be very pleased if you did, to get the MSc, because the postgraduate diploma is half of an MSc. So once you've done your 120 credits, you will be a qualified teacher of deaf or visually impaired children, but you can carry on and do a dissertation, and I would welcome you to do that. So we have 3 pathways through, the one for deaf learners, one for visually impaired learners, and the one about bilingual learners. Currently, I don't think we've got any people who are talking about bilingual learners. So I think to start with, I'd like to hand over to our programme director, Natasha Pantich. She's coming to say a few words. Natasha, I'll just hold up these. If you just stand about here, that would be right, because we're live streaming it.
Okay. Thank you. Is this about the right distance?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Pantich, the program director. I'm really just popping in to say hello and to make sure you know who I am and that you can find me if you need to. I'm sure Rachel will show the contact details and all that, room number. And one thing I would like to say, as you know, it's a complex program. There are many other pathways, and for your pathway, you are in safe hands. No one knows more about deaf learners and visual impairment than people who will be your pathway coordinators and also personal tutors. So I'm sure you are sorted for whatever you need for your program. What I would like to say is please do also make use of other opportunities that are available to you while you are with us on the program. I'm sure Rachel will run you through the general MSc in Inclusive Education website, where you can find information about the program more broadly, and do try to, as much as you can, get involved in other opportunities that will be advertised on that website. The specific one I would like to mention is General Teaching Council recognition. You will probably cover that. There is a folder on the Learn page where you can find information about how you can use the coursework for professional recognition, which I assume will be relevant for people on this pathway. And there are other opportunities. For example, career services have some information that we will be sharing through that Learn announcements about all sorts of things that go on in the university that you can benefit from. So I'll hand back to Rachel and just wish you a good time on the program, and I hope to meet you. I'm in Chatri's land, room 4115, so please do pop in when you're around and enjoy the program.
Thank you very much, Natasha. That's great. Okay, thank you. And Andy and John, I see you're here at the moment as well. Would you like to come and do your bit now to explain your role? Because Andy's got two roles actually on this MSc Inclusive Education. One is to do with teaching, and the other one is to do with being Postgraduate Studies Director. So this is Andy Hancock. I'll just hold these, make it easier.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you for choosing Murray House School of Education and Sport and the pathway. Are these...
They're all on the visual impairment pathway or the deaf education pathway.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, we don't have any bilingual pathway, but
yeah,
hopefully we will in future.
So, as Rachel said, I have two roles. I'm the Director of Postgraduate Studies here at Murray House, which means I oversee all the postgraduate taught and all the postgraduate research students. We're expecting over 1,000 postgraduates taught students starting this week across 16 very varied programs. Our most popular one is TESOL, Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages, where we have almost 400 students, full-time students, predominantly from China, taking that program, and also includes the sports programs as well. So it's a very complex, at about 137 PhD students. I know you're not thinking about doing a PhD at the moment, but you never know when you've graduated with your masters, that you never know, that might be your next step. So if you're interested in that, please have those discussions. So it's a very complex portfolio of programs and a very, very diverse campus that we have here. And I know most of you will be in full-time employment, teachers, yes, with a very demanding job, and taking this part-time as well. So my other role is as the coordinator of the bilingual learners strand. My background is in EAL. I was the manager of the bilingual support service in North Lanarkshire, where I had a team of bilingual teachers, and I was also a language support teacher across the days of the old central region. So my background is very much in EAL before I came to the University of Edinburgh. So that is the pathway that I coordinate, but I understand there's nobody here from that one at the moment.
No, but
no.
you will be seeing the deaf education people in semester 2 when we have
Of
promoting
course.
achievement, and which
Yeah.
we co-teach. So.
Yes. And have you mentioned about that course?
Not yet, no.
No. Okay. Can I leave that to you?
Yeah, I'll
to
tell
talk
you about it.
it.
Yeah, because it doesn't apply to all of them.
No, but it is well, I'll say it's an excellent course because it's one of the few ones that's actually been co-designed between Rachel and myself, and I think it brings together the different strengths of those different types of specialisms and makes it quite an interesting course to deliver. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And now Professor John Ravenscroft, who is, would you like to... Oh,
I'll go after Elizabeth.
okay, fair enough.
You did a bit? Oh, okay.
You did yours first, didn't you? So this is Professor John Ravenscroft, who is the director of the Scottish Sensory Centre, which you may know about, and also he teaches on the VI pathway.
Hi everyone.
Hands up on the VI. Woo! Well, that's quite a lot. That's very good. So we'll all see you fairly soon. That's excellent. So the first course this year, as you know, is CVI. I think it's the only course in the UK, I think, at the moment that does CVI for 20 credits. So we're looking forward to that. That should be quite good. For those who haven't read yet about it, it's a collaboration we do with Perkins School for the Blind. And there are 2 initial face-to-face sessions with Elizabeth and myself, where we go through a little bit about CVI and prematurity, and the online sessions with Perkins, and then you come back and you do a nice presentation all about CVI in your groups, of which Elizabeth and I shall mark and things like that. So it's all very exciting, all very good. So we're looking very forward to that. And then next year, of course, we have inclusion policy and practice, and where we try to also arrange some visits as well. But generally, this year will be fun. It's good. It's hard. Just think CVI, right? Just think CVI. That's all you've got to think between now and Christmas.
Maybe
is
for the benefit
CVI.
of the people in deaf education, you could say what CVI means.
Cerebral visual impairment. So most kids with visual impairment in the developed world don't have ocular eye problems, they have brain problems, which has an effect on their vision. So most kids in the UK, in Europe, in America, Australia, New Zealand, anywhere else really in the developed world have CVI. And so we're going to go and explore that through the course, particularly with myself and Elizabeth and with Perkins. So it's all very good, all very exciting.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the SSC while you're here?
SSC, yes, yes. Who's used the SSC already? Put your hands up. Higher, higher, higher. It's like Brucey's bonus. You get an extra bonus. Higher, good. Good, good, good. So the SSC is just across the road there, just across the corridor, I should say, just down there. And it's a centre for professional learning, professional development, along with research. Both Rachel and I have research projects based in the centre. And we have a library there, we have the website there for use, and if you need any extra support or materials, you can speak to some of the staff there, particularly Sheila Mackenzie, who's got a vast knowledge of what's available in terms of literature and new books, both in VI and HI, and it's very worth getting to know Sheila. Sheila can be your good friend and can actually generate, if you like, an additional resource lists as well. So it's well worth speaking to Sheila as well. So we're just over there, and
it's a postal library as well, which is useful for many people.
So it's all useful, and we've got the lists, and you can search for what books we have online as well. We have the online catalogue as well. So it's slightly different to the main library because it's a very specialist library that we have, both in HIVI and complex needs. So that's us.
Thank you
Is
very
that
much.
me?
Yeah, that's great.
Right,
Great,
good. Thank you very much. And hi to all you live streaming people. I haven't forgotten about you either. So hello and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Thanks very much, Sean. That's great.
Thank you. Good. I'll take my coffee, which is really cheap. I'll see you all in October. October? Is it October, Elizabeth?
Yes, 7th October.
7th October. How exciting.
It's good to sound excited on the first day. Okay, so Elizabeth's going to come. Oh, I'll just put this back on now.
Could you just open your phone, please?
Oh, yes.
Just a few more people.
Yeah, Sean is here, I see. There we are.
Thank you.
Just the top 3 there and you. Okay, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the structure of the course. And this PowerPoint is on Learn. And as we go through, you'll find out what Learn is and where it is and how you can get on it. So at the moment, I'm going to do links, which will take us to more information. So, first one, you will have probably seen this inclusive education page, and when you go down this is the link that we need to look at. Inclusive education program structure, and the important bit for us is right at the very bottom of this page, where you can see the timetable with the dates and the times and the rooms of the courses that you're going to go on, and you can see the course application form. And we're going to return to those, but just for now, you can then see deaf learners and visually impaired learners. You've probably explored this already, but to go into the deaf learners one, then you see the courses that are available to us. And each of these, when you click on them, I'll just click on Deaf Studies for now, will take you through to a page which looks a bit boring, but it's full of important information about the course. The learning outcomes, the basic reading, the tutor name at the bottom left, Marie's contact as the course secretary. Marie has to be course secretary for all the courses on the programme, which is a lot. So hang on. So this is quite a useful page to look things up from. This is the deaf learners one, and then I'll go into the VI one. So when you look at the structure, you can see that most of the courses on the diploma are compulsory, but not all. So we've got these ones which are 20, 20, 20, 20, 10, 10. So that adds up to 100 credits. And then you have one so-called option course, which is only one listed here. But actually, if I go into the other one, I think it should be listed. There's a bit more choice than that. Yes, there's a little bit more choice. You don't just have to do, there's a little bit of choice here. Inclusive pedagogy is the one which is most accessible to most of you. It's a general inclusive education course. Education for all, collaborative working, and teachers as agents of change. They're all available to you as your one option. Many people might think for the job of being a teacher of deaf children or teacher of visually impaired children, that actually collaborative working might be the most use, because that is what you're doing all day long. However, Martin is going to pop over at about 2:10, and he will explain about his course. It's a twilight course. So if you happen to live near Edinburgh, it really is a real option. But if you live elsewhere, it probably isn't. So the reason why we're suggesting inclusive pedagogy is because it's a very accessible course for most people, however far away they live. So it has got 2 days in the university. And the first one is the 20th of September. And the second one, I think, is the 15th of November. Just offhand. And the rest of the time it's online. Education for All is Saturdays. I think only 2 Saturdays. So again, it might suit some people. And it's a course which is about the underlying issues in education. For example, social justice, discrimination, issues around equalities. So whereas inclusive pedagogy, which Holly will explain a little bit more in a moment, is more about what happens in the classroom, how you teach to include all children, and how you liaise with the class teacher who is doing that. Collaborative working, Martin is going to come and talk about it. And Teachers as Agents of Change is actually Natasha's course. Natasha is our programme director, and that's timetabled, I think it's Monday twilight. So again, not ideal unless you're living near Edinburgh, but do explore these options, because we don't know exactly what your situation is, and you do have a slight amount of choice at this point. These options are choices. I think probably people will gravitate towards inclusive pedagogy just because it's most flexible in the way it's delivered, but the others are worth having a look, and you can find them on the deaf part. They are actually also available to students on the visually impaired pathway as well. So let me go back to the structure. Are you going to do this part?
No, sorry, just
Oh.
your phone again, sorry.
Oh, right. Shall I write down my password?
That would be a good idea.
We can't get access, not sure of the issue.
Yes.
Right, well, Nellie said that she'd left. I think Sean was saying, I don't think the link is working. Okay, can you just say apologies? Nellie left her phone number up there. It sounds like this link might not be working properly. Yeah, usually we would have someone here. I'm hoping it's going to be recorded. Do you think you could ring
Yeah.
Nellie up?
Yeah, I will do.
Thank you. Hope it's going to work. So this link is what I've just shown you. You've met Natasha as the programme director, and you can see her contact details there. Normally you won't probably see Natasha very much because she's overseeing full-time students and part-time students, but she also coordinates our team meetings, and we're all interested in inclusive education. She's managing the programme at the moment. And here are some of the teachers that you're going to be meeting. Holly Linklater is, with any luck, you're going to see her virtually because she's not at the campus today, and she's going to talk about inclusive pedagogy, her course. Elizabeth, you've just met. There are other teachers in the team who you've met. Andy Hancock, who teaches courses about bilingualism. You probably won't be taking any courses about specific learning difficulties, but we have a teacher who teaches about specific learning difficulties called Carol Graham. She works for Perth and Kinross. I think I'm right about that. A council as well. Laura Mitchell, who was, remember that course option you have, which you could do Saturdays, Education for All. You probably don't have an opportunity to do these courses. There are many courses in our programme which are really exciting and interesting, but unfortunately, for those of you who are going to be training to be teachers of deaf children or visually impaired children, there isn't really a lot of choice unless you want to go for auditing extra courses, which you can actually ask to do, but so sorry about that. I'm just telling you who these people are. Professor Lani Florian, you may have heard her name because she's been active in Scotland for quite a long time around the idea of inclusive education and inclusive pedagogy. And Martin, who he's going to come back at about 2:15. You can have a talk to him. I teach on the deaf education pathway. I teach the language and communication course and the placement course, and also promoting achievement with Andy. Brian teaches the audiology course. Brian Shannon is the educational audiologist and head of service in Fife, so he's very much a practitioner. Audrey Cameron will teach deaf studies this semester, a 10-credit course with only 2 days attendance. Natasha is doing Teachers as Agents of Change, and John Ravenscroft sold the CVI course so well, I want to go on it. And you've met Marie already. I think, although Marie has got her own email address, please use the generic one, Inclusive Education, because it just means that if she's off on holiday, someone else will monitor that email, and just get into the habit of using her proper email, which is Inclusive Education. So we have got 2 different sorts of handbooks. In fact, there's probably more than that. There's a lot of different sorts of handbooks when you come on this course. To start off with, the most general one is called the Postgraduate Taught Handbook. And I think that is probably only available electronically this year, so I'll show you in a minute how to get it. Then we have a handbook for the programme, Inclusive Education, and then you have a pathway handbook. Now, the VI pathway handbook, Elizabeth has got it online, and for the deaf education pathway, I've got it in hard copy. But basically, a lot of things will be online from now on. I'm going to, I think Marie left some copies of a handbook. There they are. Is that all the same thing?
There are hard copies of this is the generic
PGT.
taught.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this is available online, but I'm going to give you a hard copy. Could you give them out? Would that be all right? Thank you very much. I'll just take one of them to hold up so they can see it online. So this is a handbook which comes out of the postgraduate office, and it tells you the general rules about being a student at postgraduate level. And you can see when you look in, Andy Hancock is there as the director of so many students. It's quite scary how many students. This has got important information in about assessment. So you're going to be looking at this when you do your first assignment, and in fact all your assignments. I'll come back to that a bit later on in the afternoon, but the crucial pages for you are going to be 12 to 14. You're going to need those pages. And then, is there a postgraduate inclusive, there's an inclusive education is probably on the Learn site, okay. Right, I'm just going to come out of the PowerPoint And I'm going to start at the outside page of the university, and I'm going to show you how to get in to learn. You may have done this already. You go to the main university website, or you put MyEd into Google. And can you see on the very top right there, there's a little link called, oh thanks Andy, called MyEd. Click on there, and it asks you to log in with ease. The first time you do it, you go to that little one there to set up your passwords and everything. So I'm going to log in, which I think is already saved. Okay, now it's got email. You're going to get information from us through email. You may have emailed us by now, up till now, on your home email, but from now on you'll be emailing us on your student email, which is your student number. It starts with an S, and that's the first part of your email address. So click on your email and explore that. And then also we have got teaching, and then you click on teaching and research. I think your one probably says teaching and research, and then learn. Learn is our virtual online environment. Now I have a lot of Learn courses at the moment. You'll never have this many. That's not actually all I have, because I click on this thing, this little icon top right, and that will click on all the Learn courses I have ever been enrolled on. Do you want to see how many that is? It's quite scary. It's a lot. You'll never have to worry about this. But it's quite useful for finding last year's courses, because they sort of get hidden. So for this year, there's one Learn site which you should now all be enrolled on, or nearly all of you. If you've had an unconditional offer, and if you accepted that offer, then that means that you will be able to get into this course, and it's called Inclusive Education General. I'm going to click on it now. I think for most of you that will be the only course that's showing up under Learn just at the moment. And when we go into it, we can see there is the programme handbook for inclusive education. So you can download that and have a look at it. And then you can see the timetable, which is the same as the one that I showed you from the Inclusive Education webpage about the dates, the times and the rooms. There's some information about a course called Sources of Knowledge, and we use the acronym SOK. Some of you will be taking that course. I'll talk to you a bit about that in a minute. Then this is for all students, information which might be useful for all students. There's lots of things here about academic reading and writing and careers. Now when you're navigating Learn, you have to go back by this bar here. Can you see where it says Inclusive Education General? If it goes underlined, that means that's the last step you've been on. So this is what we're on now, all students. And to go back, you don't go up to the left-hand arrow up here. You just go along the way on this bar to the first thing which becomes underlined, course content. Okay, now I want to go down a little bit, and there you can see part-time students. Now you're all part-time students, and I've put in today's agenda the link for the induction session, which I'm sorry if the people who are watching it online can't see it, but hopefully they can now. Oh, thank goodness for that. Today's PowerPoint, which means that you can then look up the links, you can download it, and application form for individual courses, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And here we have two folders, one for deaf education student and one for visual impaired pathway students. And in each case there's a handbook. So actually there are 3 levels of handbook. I know it's slight overkill. There's a postgraduate taught, which you've got in hard copy, and then there is the inclusive education handbook, and then there is the pathway handbook. So you're going to need to keep all of these in some folder on your computer so you know where to look them up. 3 handbooks. I think that's all there are. The things that are in the Inclusive Education Handbook, I'll just show you it quickly so you can see what sort of thing it is. It's just basic information about the whole inclusive education programme, including the stage of going on, what is a personal tutor, we're in a college which is bigger than this school, how to get into MyEd, which I'm talking to you about now, fees, very important about the fees office, which buildings we use here at Murray House, and who's in the team for teachers. What's the whole MSc like? We're not on the MSc in this group, we're on the postgraduate diploma, but the wider MSc includes a dissertation, and I really do hope some of you consider that. So these are all the many different courses we have. So I think the general inclusive education handbook is useful to have, and just you need to know that you can get there. Right, so I'm going to go back now to the presentation. So do you feel that you now, how many of you have already got in to MyEd and seen a Learn site, that Learn site? Put your hands up properly. Okay, so most of you have managed that already. I only put you on yesterday, so that's good that you've done it. So what I'm going to try and do now, before we go any further, is I'm going to try to go back to see if we can find Holly.
So first of all, good afternoon. It's nice to see some fresh faces. As Rachel said, my name's Martin Toy. By background, I first worked as a primary school teacher and then pretty quickly went back and trained as a psychologist. So I suppose maybe it's unsurprising that I have an interest in a course that's about interdisciplinary or multi-professional collaboration between people who work alongside each other in the kind of broad spectrum of children's services. The course, the Collaborative Working in Children's Services course, is designed, I suppose, specifically, or at least initially was designed specifically for people like you. So I suppose for part-time people who are working currently in some kind of role involving children. And the reason, I suppose, one of the main reasons that I can say that is because of when it's delivered. So some people find this a benefit, others, you know, it's prohibitive, but the course is what we call a twilight course. So it runs from 4 until 6 p.m. And there are 7 of those face-to-face sessions which run from September through to November. So I suppose that our thinking there was that this course would be accessible to people who have a day job, who are working in the area in which the course relates. And so hopefully those Tuesday evening twilight sessions would be accessible for some of you. Now I appreciate some of you might be sort of located or situated far enough away that that's not going to be an option. But hopefully for some of you at least, that will make the course accessible alongside a kind of full-time career commitment. So I'm not going to read you the full course description, I promise, but just to take the first sentence. This course is designed to enable students to demonstrate specialist knowledge and understanding of collaborative working in children's services, taking schools, nurseries, out-of-school care, youth and community work, as well as family work, including integrated teams and children and family centres. It will enable students to consider issues of interprofessional collaboration and will help students demonstrate a systematic understanding and knowledge of the key issues of collaborative working. So I'm sure most people in this room, given your pathway on the course, are probably involved in work with other professions, probably on a daily or weekly, if not daily, basis. So I suppose, what does that mean? Well, it means you'll probably bring a lot to the course, and each year we kind of tweak the course slightly to reflect the backgrounds and experiences of those who are on the course. In terms of what you'll learn, obviously Scotland has some good practice in this area if we think about GIRFIC, but we'll also look at national and international policies from beyond Scotland so that we can take best practice from nations, individual nations beyond Scotland, but also international policies, things like European and United Nations human rights, and how that relates to or underpins our requirement to work collaboratively in the best way that we can. There is a lot of focus, as I said, on your individual backgrounds and the ways in which you work collaboratively. But I suppose there, like any course, are some kind of core topics that we'll explore. So just to give you an idea of what those are, week by week, After the kind of beginning introduction week to the course, we'll spend some time in that week reflecting on your background, your experience of collaboration, how that may vary according to your background, your training, whether you work more with education or medical sort of trained staff, if you like. That often plays a kind of key role in terms of the ways in which you work. We'll then go on to look at policy, as I said, beginning with GERFIC, going beyond the Scottish context, but also looking at international policies, as I said, things from the European Union, although that may change slightly, and from the United Nations. After that, we'll spend a week looking at collaboration specifically in the early years. So obviously, everyone here will know there are kind of unique sort of early years specific collaborations that tend to take place when working with younger children. We'll spend a week looking at how we involve parents and children in that process, because I think we're often good at thinking about how we can work together as different professionals, but of course maybe not always so good at making sure parents and children can sort of actively participate and understand what's going on. We'll spend a week looking at child protection issues in terms of making sure that some of the high-profile cases that I'm sure we've all heard about recently, making sure how we don't repeat those mistakes, making sure that everyone's aware of their collective and individual responsibilities for child protection. We'll spend a week looking at working with diverse families, so single-parent families, same-sex families, and I suppose increasingly relevant migrant and immigrant families as well, where there might be language barriers and so on. A week looking at the kind of practical skills that underpin effective meetings, collaboration in terms of written work, so standard use of language and making sure that we all kind of understand key or technical terms sort of in the same way. We'll spend a week looking at international examples of policies such as GERFIC, which is probably what most people in the room are working to, but I suppose there are some lessons to be learned from similar equivalents overseas. And then towards the end of the course, we'll spend a week looking at theory. I thought we'd leave that until the end. I think that can sometimes be a bit sort of difficult to get your head around at the beginning. So we'll kind of try to tie everything together in terms of looking at some key theories around collaborative working. And we'll also spend a bit of time looking at critical writing, because I appreciate, for some of you it might have been a while since you've thought about a piece of academic writing, so we'll spend some time looking at that as well. That's just a very brief flavour of the course. As I said, you as the kind of the cohort in many ways kind of dictate what we'll look at based on your backgrounds and what you bring to the table, both in terms of what you're confident about and maybe what you're less confident about or what you'd like to explore. In terms of assessment, the assessment for this course is a single assessment, so it's just one essay at the end of the course, 4,000-word assignment based around the very broad theme. And the reason we have given this such a broad title is to reflect and allow people to make use of their own professional experience. So, we often have teachers, psychologists. Your background is, Rachel, these
impairment and deafness.
Yeah, so each of those different backgrounds obviously mean that you'll be interested in exploring collaboration from a slightly different perspective. So we keep the assignment title broad and allow you to kind of focus in on whatever aspect of collaboration from whatever perspective you choose to do so. So the title for the assignment is simply Collaborative Working, Barriers, Problems and Solutions. So I suppose hopefully that kind of shows you that this is really a course you can, I suppose, make your own depending on your sort of particular working circumstances or backgrounds. There is, of course, also ongoing formative feedback opportunities throughout the weekly face-to-face sessions, also through participation in online discussions where you can kind of provide feedback to each other, and you will also have the opportunity to submit a 300-word plan for your essay, which one of the teaching team will comment on. So that's it really from me. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour for the course. If you're interested, you can obviously go online and read the full course description, If you want to ask any specific questions, you can contact me. I think my details will already be on the Learn site. And if not, you can contact Rachel or Natasha, the course organiser, and they can put you in touch with me. Okay. Any questions about anything at this stage? Probably not, I appreciate. But my course is an option for you guys, that's right. So you don't have to take this course, but you will have to make up, obviously, the credits beyond the compulsory modules. So, you know, it's not the only one, but I was here today and available, so I thought I would come along and give you some insight. Okay. Are you?
I'm still having a terrible trouble.
I'm trying to drag this out. So it's good.
Well, what I'd like to ask you is, because Holly is suggesting this, knowing that I should have set this link up properly before. Would you be able to use your own Skype? I've tried using Skype for Business, which is what we're meant to use, and it won't let me. Okay, I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties. That Holly Linklater is an important person to meet because she can explain about inclusive pedagogy as a course, but I think Martin might get hold of her and then we can perhaps... I can talk about the course, but it's just better if we can actually see her, let her talk about it. So, do you want to do the bit about the personal tutor? Yeah. Oh, so sorry. There we are. That's it. And I'll give you this again. So this live stream's working okay?
Yes, live stream's working.
Good. There you go. You might just want to hold them.
Yeah. Okay, so moving swiftly on. Just a little bit about your personal tutor. So now that you are students with an S number, or hopefully most of you do, and those that don't will in a few days, you will be allocated a personal tutor. Now it's very simple. If you're on the visual impairment pathway, then I'm your personal tutor. And if you're on the pathway for teachers of the deaf, then Rachel is your personal tutor. But I also think this year that Martin's doing some as well. Or you decide to keep them? Right, okay. Changing surfaces of inclusive education. So Rachel will be your tutor if you are a teacher of the deaf. So as a student, and when you read the handbooks, it will tell you that you're entitled to 1 meeting per year. As it says here, 20 minutes. Now, we try our best, but obviously, if you're a full-time student, it's fairly easy to arrange a meeting with your tutees because you're here in the university all the time. But if you're on a part-time course, as you're here for a few days, you're back in your own place of work, it is more difficult. However, we can do tutorials by Skype or by telephone. And if you're on the visual impairment pathway, then with many of the courses, although not CVI, on the final afternoon, I will set up tutorial meetings for you to discuss the assignment or just to discuss how things are going in general. Now, you can request a meeting with your tutor at any time. And when we have a meeting, it's very formal, the way it's written down in the rules and regulations, that you have to submit a plan and all sorts of things. We don't really bother too much unless you're desperate to do so. But we will keep a record of our discussions on Euclid, which is our system. And you can find out a little bit more about it here. That didn't work. There we go. I'll just go back. So you can look at the link and it will tell you a bit more about the personal tutor system. So you will have a meeting, definitely, and of course you'll also have the face-to-face sessions with us when you are here for the different courses. But your personal tutor is a very, very important person, because if there is a crisis or something happens, and unfortunately with the best will in the world something often does, particularly around the time when you are due to submit an assignment, then your personal tutor is the person that you need to go to. Now, normally that works quite well, I've found, if it's a particular course that's for visual impairment or hearing impairment. But if you're doing your option course or the sources of knowledge course, people forget that it's your actual personal tutor who is the one that you need to contact and inform them that you're perhaps not going to be able to meet the deadline for your assignment because something has happened. And we're going to talk about that a lot more when you come on your first course. And I'm not sure if it's covered in this PowerPoint, but we'll tell you in detail what happens should it be that you can't manage to submit your assignment for the deadline. So I'm just going to move on. For contacting your tutor, we really prefer that you use our university email addresses. Now, the reason for that is just because we're all very busy. I only work 3 days a week at the university, so if you contact me by email, you know you're going to get me, and I generally reply fairly quickly. Before you contact us, though, we do ask that you just check the handbooks. We have a lot of them. We've already explained them today. So the Postgraduate Top Programme and the Deaf and VI Pathway handbooks as well. Have a look at those first, see if these can answer your query, and if not, drop us an email and we will get back to you. Okay, so next thing we're just going to talk a little bit about is registering as a student. So if we click on this link here.
Right.
Right, now, I think that most of you have probably got from this link on, you can put into the general search engine for the university matriculation. So matriculation just basically means that you're joining. So if you search on the University of Edinburgh website for matriculation, you'll come to this page, or else you can go via the PowerPoint. So you have to register online, and I think if you've probably done this because most of you have had unconditional offers and then you've confirmed them. Has anyone got holding on to a conditional offer at the moment that's here? I know some people online have got, there's one person online I know has got a conditional offer, but I think almost everyone should have had an unconditional offer, and then what you have to do is confirm it, and that means you're definitely going to come. Now, pay the tuition fees. You don't need to pay the tuition fees. What you need to do is tell them that your authority is going to pay the tuition fees. So that means that you have to make sure that the authority and the fees department get in touch with each other. So this website, if you click through here, will take you to the finance department about paying fees. But you're not going to be paying any fees. You have to be absolutely clear about that. If someone sends you on your email a message saying you owe fees, no, you don't. It's your employer that pays fees. And we'll come back to, where do we do that next? Is it coming in? Yeah, I'm going to have a slide on that a little bit later on. So registering as a student is basically following that link here and getting your student card. Let's see if this one works. Hopefully this one might work. We're having gremlins today. Every system here doesn't work as it should do. Right, getting your student card. Here we are. Oh, it has got there. So again, go to the General University website and put getting your student card in the search terms, and you get to this page. You're a new student. It tells you how to make your photo for yourself, which you can do at home on your computer. And then it tells you how to submit your photograph. And then it will tell you how to get your card, receiving your card. So you submit your photograph online, and then you can collect your card. Now, some of you may have done that, and you can see the dates here. This week is the 9th to the 13th. And if you wanted to go and collect your card, you can go to the main library. Now, the main library is up at George Square. Postgraduate students. It's going to be the main library. So after today, you might want to walk up to George Square. It's a nice walk, probably about 10-15 minutes. However, I think after Welcome Week, the cards probably get transferred down to our library, which is here. So that's another alternative. Some people will have got them by post. I don't know whether anyone's yet got their student card. And did you get it through the post? Yeah. Well, that's the easiest way. If you get the possibility of doing that, it just saves you a bit of trouble. But if you've just recently accepted an unconditional offer and you've done the photograph online, it's quite likely that the card will be up the road at the library. But can anyone remember when they filled that form in? Did it have a box to tick saying you'd like it by post? It just came. Automatically got sent. It's regarded as an online course because it's not an online course. That's the thing. Okay, well that's good. So in that case, don't worry about. I mean, it's nice to walk up to George Square, but don't worry about collecting a card because it's unnecessary hassle, and it's likely to be coming to you by post. If not, there is a contact place there. Can you see? Contact us. So if you haven't got your card, do contact them. And they've got a phone number as well. It's useful to have your card because you can get into the library with the card. This library here at Murray House and the one up the road at George Square. Okay. Right, now we've already talked about getting into Learn. I've shown you how to do that, and you've only been registered so far on one course, which is the Inclusive Education General one. And that's really used as a sort of notice board for all the communications between us on the Inclusive Education courses. We also have a discussion board on the Learn site, which is a way of communicating with other students. Quite a lot of students like to set up other groups as well, like WhatsApp groups on their course, which is absolutely fine. But be aware if you do use a WhatsApp group that Elizabeth and I are probably not on it, so we can't dispel rumours, whereas if you use the Learn site and the discussion board there, then we can see what you're talking about and feed in information which is probably more accurate. So there's nothing wrong with having a WhatsApp group. It's actually a very good idea for helping each other study and clarifying things, but don't forget to use other methods to communicate with us. So university email. You will have a university email account which uses your student number as its email address. And I'd like you to try to get into the habit of using it. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to, but you should set up a divert to your own email. So I'll just show you again how to get in there. I just went into MyEd, and because I was already in MyEd before, it's just gone straight through. This is one way to do it, just to go within MyEd into your email. Okay? So is Office 365. Office 365 is a useful tool. You're probably using it at work anyway. So if you want to set up a divert, you need to investigate the settings, which are here, and set yourself up a divert into your own email. So that means that you will be no reason why you shouldn't see everything connected with the course. You should see it. And I think the reason why that's particularly important is because sometimes the fees office sends you an email to your student email, and if you're not checking it regularly, that email can sit there for ages. And quite often it has happened in the past that the fees office is charging you individually when they should be charging your employer. You don't want that situation to ever happen. If it does happen, please contact your personal tutor, that's Elizabeth or myself, straight away, because we can help, but if you don't check your university email, you're going to miss those messages. The consequences of not using it and letting the fees department say silly things like that is that some people get locked out of the system and they can't get to study. They can't see any learning materials. They can't get into Learn or the library. We don't want that to happen, so please check your email. Now, this is what the rules about the fees. Every year, you've got to try to remember to do this. And this is why, to prevent you getting locked out of the system. Ask your employer, that is not necessarily the head of service, it's probably someone in your finance department, to send an email every year to the fees office. And they should include your student number so that they know who you're talking about. As soon as you've given your student number, they can look up the course that you're on. But it's also important to say what courses you're taking this year. So the fees department needs to acknowledge that they are going to be paying the fees for this year. Okay, that's all they need to do, and your finance department will tell the fees office who they are, where to invoice, and it mustn't come to you. So if you get stuck on that, the fees office, you can just put fees into the university website. Here is the fees office. So I can't really stress enough how important it is to do this. I don't want anybody else to have to experience being locked out of the system. So your employer, let's say South Lanarkshire Council, has to give details of where the invoices are to be sent. And that's the email, fees@ed.ac.uk. Now, it's a rather strange thing. You've all got onto the programme. The programme is the name of the whole diploma. But as well as that, you're going to be enrolling on individual courses. And that's because the programme is a part-time one and it's a sort of roll-on, roll-off programme. It might take you 2 years to get the diploma. It might take you 3 years or 2.5 years. Some people, you have up to 4 if you're on the 4-year route. So you need to know where to go to fill the form in. And I think I've shown you this already. If we go onto the website and we put in inclusive education, you go to structure, remember? And at the very bottom of this page are the 2 crucial links that you need. The dates and the times of the courses for this year. And here you can see, okay, collaborative working, the course that Martin was talking about. And you can see that it's on Tuesday 4 till 6. It gives you the room number. And cerebral visual impairment. Remember that John was talking about that one. In fact, most of that course is going to be online, but there are 3 sessions when you're here.
3 face-to-face, and it starts at 10 o'clock, not 9, as that says.
Well, it doesn't say 9.
Or does it not?
Oh, yes, it does.
Yes,
It needs to be changed.
Yes. It's
So 10.
o'clock, yeah.
Right, okay. So for Deaf Studies, which will be a first course for many of you, the dates are the 11th and 12th of November, 10 till 5, and it's got 2 different room numbers for each day. So that's an important website. Can you remember how to get there? Go to Inclusive Education, right to the bottom. And here, the very last link on the Inclusive Education structure is the link called Course Application Form. Now, this form you will fill in every year. And after today, you'll probably know what you're going to fill in for this year. So you have to put down details of your student number, your address, the course that you're on, and then you put the course titles that you're going to go for. It's a word form, so if you're going to go for 4 courses in the first year, just extend it with another row. You put the course code in. Now, you might think, oh, I don't know the course code. Yes, you do. It's on your pathway timetable. The course codes are all there. The course start date, you can find that out from looking at the dates and the times. And this is the most important point. Do not put self in here. You put the name of the council. Now, this is where we want to try and make sure that our records link up better with fees. So if you want to, you could also put the address of the council finance office, because I think it's very important that those organisations link properly. Then you sign it. You don't have to do it actual signature. You can just electronically sign it, and you get it back to the email address, which is Marie's email address. Do you remember the Inclusive Education one? It is good if you can make sure that every semester, every term, you are doing something. Otherwise, people sort of go off the radar, and that means they don't complete efficiently. We want to get you through this diploma fairly efficiently. We would like you to do it in 2.5 years max, actually. But some people, for one reason or another, have to take longer, and then that's fine. You have to discuss it with Elizabeth and myself, and we can say, OK, that's fine. You want to take a semester out? I might, if there's a reason for it, I might interrupt your studies, which gives you a longer period to complete. You see what I mean? So if something is happening in your life, let's say you're moving house, you're having a baby, and you're looking after an elderly parent, that's a reason for having some time off. You need to contact your personal tutor, who is either Elizabeth or me, and discuss it, provide some evidence, and then we will interrupt you. So even though it looks like a 4-year programme, we can extend that if you've got a reason. So we might be able to get you 4 months out and then get back to your studies when the next term starts. But generally speaking, you should be doing something in every semester. So people on the deaf education pathway, I would like to suggest, if you're thinking about 2.5 years for doing the course, or possibly 3 years, then you should start this semester with Deaf Studies and Sources of Knowledge. And next semester, you should be doing Promoting Achievement and Curriculum Access. If you're confident in your role as a teacher of deaf children and you've been doing it for a while, you know what you're doing, you should also apply for the placement course and do that course after you've handed in Promoting Achievement. So if you're not confident in that role, you've only just started the job and you want to take the programme a little bit more slowly, then just go for those 3 courses for the first year. That is Sources of Knowledge, an online course this semester, Deaf Studies, face-to-face, 2 days this semester, Promoting Achievement, coming in blocks next semester, and that's it. That's 40 credits for the year, which is fine. But don't go AWOL, don't have a term off and never tell us, because we do need to know what you're doing. You choose by filling this form in, but we also need to keep track of you and make sure that you are okay and that you're progressing. Every year we take every single student to the exam board and we want to know that you're making good progress. Have you got any questions about this form? Because it is not my idea about how to organise it, that's just the way the university does it, but it is slightly weird. Yeah.
Does it have to be put in each year, or can it be done termly?
Yes, the question was, does it have to be at the start of the year or can you do it twice in a year? You can do it twice in a year. And sometimes people, local authorities really can't commit because of financial constraints. And then as you're going on, you might think, well, actually, I could do the internal placement now. I'm feeling quite confident now. And then you can put another form in. That's fine. Also, if it really goes wrong for you and you realise that you can't do a course, you can just contact Marie and withdraw, from a course that you had planned to do, but actually you don't want to do it now. So you have to get through 120 credits, but you are in control of when you do them. But one thing I'd like to tell you about the deaf education and the VI courses is that they are mostly on a 2-year cycle. So if you miss them, then you're really having quite a long programme. So it's best to try to catch the specialist courses as when they come round, and you'll know that the more general courses, such as inclusive pedagogy and sources of knowledge, they will happen every year. So you'll always be able to get onto them.
Rachel, could I just talk about that for the VI?
Yes, of course, that would be good.
Thank you.
So just a little bit to talk about the VI pathway if you are looking for courses for that for this year. So again, like the Teachers of the Deaf, we would recommend that you do Sources of Knowledge, which is an online course and will help you with your academic reading and writing. Also in semester 1, as John Ravenscroft said, we've got CVI, and that's a 20 credit course. So you're starting off by doing 30 credits in the first semester. And Sources of Knowledge starts fairly quickly, and it's online in the evening. You don't need to come into the university. With CVI, we've got 3 days, 2 in October, 1 in November, as we said. But the actual submission of assignments don't overlap too much. So it is a doable 30 credits in the first semester. And Sources of Knowledge runs every year. It runs in the first semester. So at some point in time, chances are you're going to have to do 30 credits in a semester. For semester 2, which starts after Christmas, you would have the opportunity to do Inclusion Policy and Practice. Now that's a 20 credit course again, and 4 days in the university, 2 in February, 2 in March. You can look at the dates on the timetable, as Rachel has shown you. And that would then be a total of 50 credits in the first year. So there are 2 things I want to add. Normally what I do in round about April or May, when the new timetable comes out every year, I send all my students an email because I look at what you've done and what you have left to do, and I will say to you, these are the courses that I suggest that you do for the forthcoming year. But in that email, I'll also tell you to discuss that with your line manager, because obviously there are implications for cover, etc. And you can then make the decision from there. So it is really important that you think about what you've got to do, but also that you take into account what your service or school is needing as well. I also tell you to contact fees too. So you will get a reminder every year, but please do these things when they come up. And as Rachel said, we'd like to get you through. Some people do get through in 2 years, and some people take a little bit longer. It's very much up to yourselves. But always have that dialogue, both with us as your personal tutor and also with your line manager in school, so that they know what is happening as well.
I think what we might do now is have a bit of a break.
Yes.
We've been sitting here listening for a long time. I think it might be worth having 10 minutes, go a comfort break, go outside, get some air, talk to other people. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and get Holly again. So I'd like you to actually see that.
Okay. So 10-minute break, everybody, and we'll be back to start just before 3 o'clock.
Right. So the session that I would like to do now. Don't know why that's there. I'm just going to close that meeting. The session that I'd like to do now is about how to study at postgraduate level. Now, most of you probably have not studied for a while. How many people have studied within the last 5 years at university level? Good, okay, well, you're going to have a slight advantage that you've been on the course recently and you've used online libraries. I'm just going to give you a run through today about how to find resources online to help you studying. And for those of you who've I'm sorry, I'm just going to shut that door. Would you mind, Elizabeth? Thanks. Just a bit of noise coming in there. So the first place that we're going to look at is the university website. I went on holidays this summer to the Highlands, and I suddenly realised what the students in the Highlands have to go through, which is a really slow broadband, and it became a quite different experience. So if you go to the university website, which is quite easy to do, go to the university website as a whole here, and then go to the library. This is the library page, and this is the thing you want to find, Discover Ed. It's like a search engine for the library, and when you put a title of an article or an author in here, you'll get whatever you can find, and most of this is going to be online, so I'm going to just use a deaf education example. One of the key researchers and writers in the field of deaf education is a guy called Mark Marshak. So we're going to use him as an example. M-A-R-S-C-H-A-R-K. Okay, now, he has written a lot. This is all him. These are the outputs. Now, what we want to look at is the green. Can you see it says full text available? That's what you want to go for, because you're going to be studying all over Scotland and maybe England. Anyone here from England on the VI course? Okay.
People on live stream as well.
Live stream from England, yes, I know. So wherever you are in the world, you can access the library if you look for the electronic texts. More and more, the library has not got actual books, but it's got more and more actual online books, e-books. And we're going to be using a lot of academic articles, which are research articles and e-books. So we only want to really look for things that are full text online. So these are filters on the left. We're just going to click there. We only want to see things which are full text online because we're studying from home. And we also only want to see things which are recent. Now, 1910 is far too long ago. We're interested really in the last 5 years. So I'll put in 2015, let's say, to 2019. I'm going to refine that search. I want things by Mark Marshak which are completely online and are in the last 5 years. And then we can see things that he's written which are most recent. Now, Mark Marshak writes books and articles. So I'll take you to this one, which is quite a useful one for those of you on the deaf education pathway. Online access means that you can read the whole book online. So let's click through to look at what an e-book looks like online. And the full text is available. It's blue here. So I'm going to go and have a look at it. Now, if you are in an area north of Dingwall, you might find this slow, but most of the rest of you should be okay. Okay, there's an ebook, and there is the table of contents, okay? It's got several parts and several chapters. Let's go and have a look at Measuring Deaf Learners' Language Progress in School by Wolfgang, who works at University of Roehampton. There is the abstract for the chapter, the sort of, you read that first. If you want to read that chapter, if you think it's interesting, then you might read that whole chapter. Say you want to read that chapter, you could read it online like this, or you can view the PDF of that chapter, and you can save it. But when you save it, you're agreeing that you're not going to distribute it to other people. It's just for your study purposes. So I want that chapter by Wolfgang, and I've got it there, and I can save it. Where's it gone? So say I don't think I want to print it, I want to save it. This is where. Now I'm going to put it onto, let's say, my desktop. I'm going to say Man. Now the name of that book, the year of that book, I think was 2015. So I'm going to save it by the author name. Oh, I was wrong about that. It was 2018. So I've saved the PDF, and I can read that when I want a bit later on. So we can see that that is a way to get into books. Now, we can also see articles. And I'll show you an article. It says peer-reviewed. Can you see there? Purple, peer-reviewed. That means that it is in a journal. And we'll find out a little bit more about which journal it's in. I think it's called Exceptional Children. This journal. Now, what you see when you get to journals is that the electronic journals are owned in a number of packages by the library. So the library actually can get this journal in lots of different ways, about 10 different ways. In some cases, the journal is not, the package has run out for the library, and in other cases, the package is still being owned by the library. So for example, this one, I can see that it's got a start date, and it hasn't got an end date. It says the most recent 1 month is not available. So that's probably going to be fine. And this one called EBSCO Host at the bottom here, this one is available all the way through because there's no stop date. So that's a good one to go for. So click on that package. We can get to this article in many different ways, but so if one way doesn't work, we can try another way. So just wait for the article to come through, and there on the left you can see PDF full text. So if you read the abstract and you think, yes, that's the article for me, that's going to be an important one, and in deaf education this is quite an important one, it's about achievement, then you click on the PDF. The year is 2015, and again you save it. And I would start to organise your folders as much as you can on your computer so that you're saving articles by author and year of publication. So that would be Marshak et al. 2015 is a good way to remember, or perhaps you might want to put a little bit of the title in so you know what it's about, which is about academic achievement. Okay, so go back to the library. Login. There's another way to get to journals. And when you've done your initial search for a key term, you can see at the top here, e-journals A to Z. So if you know that there's a journal that you like, that you think is quite useful for your studies, you can put it in. Or if you've just got a keyword, let's say you've got a keyword visual impairment, that's going to get you any journal which has got visual impairment in the title. And there's actually 3. The British Journal of Visual Impairment, which is edited by John, and then there's 2 other ones, one based in the Netherlands and one based in the States. So if we just go into the British Journal of Visual Impairment for a moment, we can see that the library's just got one package for this, which is SAGE, and it doesn't seem to have an end date. It seems up to date. So let's go and have a look at that journal online. Now, within the journal, we can search for things. So let's say you're interested in early years. You can search within the journal. You can do it within DiscoverEd, but sometimes you get a better search by going into a particular journal that you're interested in. So let's see what comes up when we search in the British Journal of Visual Impairment. Now, the most recent or the most relevant will usually come up first, but you've got a choice here. You can sort it by the ones which are most downloaded, the most popular, the most cited, that is the most influential articles, the date of the articles, or the relevance, which will be the most near to, usually that's the one you want to go for. So, for example, here's an article about early years and autism, 2008. Now, 2008 is actually quite a long time ago in terms of doing a master's level course. We are usually quite interested in what's happened in the last 5 years. And certainly we are not very interested in anything that happened before 2000. This is particularly true in deaf education because there was a large change in deaf education about the year 2005. Does anyone know what the change was that happened about 2005 in the UK that's made quite a big difference? Something to do with babies. Newborn hearing screening started about 2005. So after that date, our evidence about young children has really changed a lot. Also, cochlear implants started about 1992, and then the numbers of them increased. So very old research from the 80s about deaf children is really not very relevant anymore. So on the whole, go for the last 5 years. So this is the journal which John edits. And if you go back to do a similar thing around deaf education journals, just to see what we've got, there's actually quite a lot. American Annals, Journal of Deaf Studies and Deaf Education, which is generally regarded as the most prestigious journal in the field. American Annals, again, online access. Deafness and Education International, that's the one that I'm the co-editor for, with a co-editor, Jill, in Australia. So you can see this one, we've got 3 different packages, and they all seem to be, they don't really have an end date, so that's good. So if we go into one here, oh, that's no good. That package can't be found. Let's try again. There's always different packages. You can usually get to an article several ways. Let's go for this one. It's Taylor and Francis package. That's the name of the publisher for that journal. And then we've got latest articles, which is always a good thing to look at. Quite a lot of latest articles. We're increasing the size of our issues. If you're a member of BATOD, you will get the paper version of this journal as well, which is quite useful. And again, within the journals, there's always a search box. So say you're interested in early years, and you want to search in this journal, not in other journals. It will bring things up, and you can order it. Again, you can order it by newest first, which is probably quite a good idea. So that's most recent ones is 2019, about early years. So that's about preschoolers. Okay, so you can see the way that we can get round the university library without stepping foot in the building, though it is actually very nice to go to the building. So I've told you about DiscoverEd, electronic journals, ebooks, and about narrowing down your search. Do you feel that you can have a play now and try to do that yourself? Okay. Now, another thing that we can look at is Google Scholar. How many of you have used Google Scholar in the past? Good, and it seems to be the same people who've recently been studying. I really like Google Scholar. I've used it since 2006, and it's been, for people who are not on a university library, it's really good. Just like ordinary Google, but it's better because it's got academic articles. Now, it works the same way as DiscoverEd. Let's say I'm interested in finding out about cerebral visual impairment. Okay, I do a search on it, and again, just like in the library, I want to choose things since 2015. I don't really care about patents or citations. So I've already narrowed down my search, and it will probably put the list up by relevance. That is, the one which is most directly about CVI will be at the top. You can see that on the right-hand side here, it's actually accessible to people without being inside the university library, which is very good because it means you can go straight there. And there's a lot more information on Google Scholar as well. If you look underneath it all, you can see cited by. Now, cited by is a measure of how reputable or important the article is. If the article is cited by hundreds, like this one down here, Epidemiology of the Cerebral Palsies, now that is actually not what we want. That's cerebral palsies, but we don't want cerebral palsy, we want cerebral visual impairment. So I'm not going to look at that one. Let's look at the first one, because it's cited by quite a lot of people. You can find out where it's been cited. That is, who has used that article in their references. It's quite a lot, quite medical by the look of it. I'm going to go back to the cause, to this again. Now, I want to have a look at that article. And in this case, it looks as though I can download it. It's got the abstract, so I can decide by reading that whether I really want to read it. Now, I could do this within Discover Ed, because it's pretty surely to be in the library already. But let's just, to save a bit of time, see whether I can download it. Yeah, it's online, it's freely available, I can download it. So that's sometimes quicker than going to the library. But sometimes when you get to this stage and you download the PDF, it says money. Do not pay any money, because if you take that title, copy it, go back into Discover Ed, you will find that you can get hold of that article. That one of the best things about this university is it's got a really good library. So let's see whether we can get it. Yes, there it is, full text available. So do not pay any money, ever. Never. Someone asks you for money, just laugh. Because even if it isn't in the library, there is another way you can do it. So I'm going to go back to the library page and show you how to get in to find things which are not held by the library. Because sometimes it does happen that there's something which is not in the library. You've tried, you've looked, you can't find it. It's not online through Google Scholar. But there is another way to do it, and that is called interlibrary loans. And it's right at the bottom of the library site, interlibrary loans. You have to sign up for it, and once you've signed up for it, you can request any article or chapter. You have 30 a year that you can do, which you will not use up. I use about 5 a year, because mostly the library has got everything. So there's a log-on page, it's called Iliad. I won't do it now, but basically that you can request things where you know the details about the book or the chapter. So this is another reason why you never need to pay for an article, because interlibrary loans will get it for you.
Rachel, do you use Leganto on any of your courses?
I should do, but I don't. Would you want to talk about Leganto? Okay, well, you get up and talk about it. Do you want to illustrate it?
Yes, please. So
Where shall I go?
Discover Ed and resource lists.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Because I think I will probably... Here?
Yeah, just I think you need to come out of that one, because you're going to look at for resource lists in the library.
Do you want just the library website?
Yeah, that's it.
I always put uni edin lib, just to get you there quickly. Okay.
Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, so if you are on a VI pathway, I organise the reading lists in a very specific way, and I use something called Leganto, and I'm going to show you what it looks like, if I can find it. I think I'm going to just... So you should bear with me, I'll find the website. So when you are on the Learn page for the individual courses in visual impairment, you will find something at the very bottom of each page called a resource list. And this is how I'm going to get at it. You will get at it through the Learn page, as I say. And just going to log in. So you can see there's one for collaborative working in children's services, which is Martin's course. And I'm going to look for the one on cerebral visual impairment.
That'll probably be enough, won't it?
Hopefully. There we go. So when you click on the link for the resource list, this is what it looks like. So the readings have all been organised according to the days that you're going to be in the university and also the sessions. So for day 1, for example, you're going to click on this little arrow that changes from going sideways to downwards. And this now gives you a list of all the readings for day 1. And if we look at them, it gives you the title of the article. It also gives you the author. It tells where it came from. So, for example, this first article, written by Gordon Dutton, Professor Gordon Dutton, can be found in a journal called Documenta Ophthalmologica. 127 brackets 1, so that's the volume number and the issue and the date and the page number given here. So I'm going to, there's also a little box here, which I've got the mouse over, and it says essential. So the readings are logged in 3 ways. They're either essential readings, so you must read them. They are recommended, so it's a really good idea if you read them. And there are some that are for further reading, the one at the very bottom. So if I go back to that first one, if I click on it, it's going to take you directly to the library. And just like as Rachel was showing you before, it tells you how to reach it. They're all online. When I click View Online, it will take me directly to that journal article, and you can download the PDF. So you'll find that for all of the courses on visual impairment. It's very useful. You can leave notes. Leganto's got lots of other features that I won't go into just now, but it's an easy way of organising the list and knowing you can mark on whether you've read them or if you've still to read them, so you can keep track of your reading. So it's another way. Other tutors will give you a list, which you can then use in Discover Ed, as Rachel showed you, but Leganto just makes it easy, we hope, to find all the readings.
I'll show them how to get a similar thing through. Yeah. I think the deaf education courses, some are on Leganto and some are just on Learn. So I'll just give you a quick tour of a course that's on Learn so that you can see that they're all pretty much available for you. Okay, I'm going to go into My Ed and I'm going to go into Learn. And I'm going to go into a course which is called Language and Communication, just to show you the way that we set out courses. So I'm going to go into this one, for example, Language and Communication. Now, in this case, I quite often organise Learn courses like this. The handbook is at the course administration. The classwork has got day by day what's going to happen or what did happen with the PowerPoints and everything. And then the readings. The readings box are organised day by day. The key readings for the morning. So they're here. If they're either going to be here with a click, or in some cases they're going to have to look them up in the library. But usually they're here with a click. Now, this does much the same thing as what Elizabeth just showed you. There might look like a lot of things to look at for this session, but actually most of them are websites as well as articles. So readings day by day gives you the most important readings that you have to read, But actually with this course, there's a lot of other reading, and I've organised it by learning outcome. So if you're interested, for example, in exploring more about the development of spoken and sign language in children, acquisition, there's a lot more reading available here. Probably a little bit too much. It's not meant to be overwhelming, but you stay with the key reading to start with, and you can explore the wider reading later on. All of those are links. So we've got two different systems. They basically do the same thing. They give you the reading day by day, which you should do before the class, and then there is wider reading to explore things in more detail, which are not compulsory, but you might be interested. So let's go back to Google Scholar. We've explored. I think I've told you enough about Google Scholar. Oh, maybe one more thing to tell you about Google Scholar, which is let me put in early years deaf education since 2015, get rid of the patents. Now, cited by, the reason why cited by is quite useful is because if you go and look at those cited by, you can see things which are more up to date. Let's, if we sort by date, the most recent is now at the top, 2019. Now, nobody's cited that yet because it's only just been published. But if we go down to things which are published in, I think that means cited by, yeah. These are, oh, that's how we cite it. Now, this is another very useful thing about Google Scholar, which saves you a bit of time. If you want to use that article, Education and Health of Children with a Hearing Loss, The Necessity of Signed Languages by Joseph Murray and Christine Snodden, which might be a great article for you to use, and you want to put it in the reference list, you just go to that double quote mark, and then it says, what format would you like to copy this reference in? And usually, I would say go for Harvard. Harvard is a system which is, you put the author first, you just go for that. And you can copy it, and then you can paste that in your reference list. So that means instead of making mistakes in your citations, you can just get it very easily through Google Scholar. And in fact, I think in DiscoverEd, you can do the same thing. So if I'm going to sort by relevance, not by date, cited by 16. Now, if we just notice this top one, it's published in 2016. It's cited by 16, so it's obviously going to be fairly important because it's not that old. If we look at the cited by 16, who they are, we can find something on the same topic which is coming to nearer to the present. Okay, so there you can see 17, 16, 17, 17, 19. So this is a much more recent article which cites that first thing that we looked at by Marshak and Noors. As you can see, Marshak's coming up quite a bit. So you can see Google Scholar has got quite a lot of advantages and gives you some quick shortcuts. So academic reading. I think I've already mentioned to you that you don't really need to read all of an article to decide whether you want to read it or not. You just go for the abstract. Once you have decided that an article is going to be useful, you can still read very strategically. And one way to do that is to use a reading form. This reading form is a Word document which you can use if you want to. You don't have to, but it might help you to read strategically, not spend too much time on studying, but get the important things down. This is a Word document on the Learn site, so you don't feel like you have to recreate it in Word. It's already there. So the bibliographic details are those things that we saw just now, which you can click and paste from Google Scholar or DiscoverEd into this reading document. Bibliographic details are the things which will in the end go on your reference list. You think to yourself, why am I reading it? That's quite important because you mustn't spend too much time reading things which are not directly relevant to what you want to find out. And then you write down a few notes on what the authors are arguing. This is to help you actually summarise what they're saying. And that summary might well help you later on when you're writing your essay. And then, just to keep you on track, what are they saying which is relevant to what I'm trying to find out, so that you stay directly on what your topic is, what you're trying to do. And then the next bit, how convincing is the author's argument? This is where you think critically. And through the whole diploma, Elizabeth and I and all the course tutors will be trying to get you to look at things from many different perspectives, not just one. So thinking critically doesn't mean tearing it to shreds, it means looking at it from several viewpoints. To get a B or above in any assignment at postgraduate level, you must be able to show that you can look at things critically, weigh up the evidence and think to yourself, is this actually a good piece of research? I'm reading it, but it might not be very strong. The research that it's based on might not be very convincing. So when you say, how convincing is the author's argument, just write some notes down to yourself about whether you think it's good quality research, because those notes may help you to formulate your critical argument or discussion. Then what use can I make of it? You might be doing an assignment, you've got to or you might be preparing for a class, and then the code at the bottom is just for your own use to decide whether you want to use it. Go back to it later on because it's quite important. And this way you can build up on your computer the PDF of the article, let's say Man 2016, and then you can save the Word document using the same code, the author name and in brackets the date, so that you've got them nicely lined up on your computer and you can return to them later on and maybe use them on another course. So gradually over the whole diploma you will get quite familiar with the literature and you will feel, yes, I do know something about the field of visual impairment or deaf education, and you'll feel a little bit more authoritative about when you're talking about your field. Does everyone get that, about the idea of that sort of note-taking? I think that there is a tendency when you come back to studying, and I know I did this myself when I did my master's, you'll be thrilled to read so much that you start ploughing through articles and books which take too long. You don't have time to do that, you have a job. And so this form is meant to be helping you to cut to the chase and work out what you need to know and to read the article or the chapter strategically. That might mean you start at the top with the abstract, you go down to the bottom to the conclusion, and then you might look at the charts. That's what I quite often do, is look at the pictures, the graphs, the tables, and then if you're really interested in it, read it right the way through. But perhaps by that time you might have got enough to work out how useful it is for you. Okay? So that's what I mean by reading strategically. There is another program which you might like to find out about. I mean, there are several actually, but one of them is called EndNote. And as a student here, you can find out about this on the university website, and you can get a free online version of EndNote. There is another version which you pay for, where you can store your PDFs on it. They're both quite useful, especially when you're formatting reference lists, and it means that you have all your reading together in one place on a program. But on the other hand, you can just keep all of that information on your computer. You don't have to use EndNote. It's just a way of formatting your reference lists. Remember, when you write an assignment, your reference list goes at the bottom and it has got the references for everything that you have referred to. So if you haven't referred to it in the main body of your assignment, you don't put it on your reference list. Generally speaking, we want to see references which are the key readings for the course, and we want to see you going beyond that too, and we give you avenues to explore. So when you're writing any assignment, think key readings. Get the key readings in as far as you possibly can, because that is how you get a C. You know, if you don't mention the key readings, if you haven't read them and you don't understand them, you're not going to get a C. If you've read them, understood them, and done a little bit more than that, starting to integrate other viewpoints, going beyond the basics, then you might get a B. So it's quite highly connected with your reading and your understanding. We will help you with this. Elizabeth and I, as course tutors, will help you to become a critical and confident reader of academic texts. That's our job. Now, note-taking in class. I'm mentioning this just because note-taking in class is a bit unusual nowadays. You don't have to do it on pen and paper. You might like to do it in a PowerPoint, in the notes section at the bottom, because you will be seeing your PowerPoints in advance, always on Learn, they'll be up in advance. You might want to take your notes at the bottom, or you might want to use an old-fashioned method paper and pen. For example, this system, which is quite a useful system where you divide your page up into different parts, and this part up here is where you take your notes, and then this is the keywords, main ideas, and then the bottom part might be a summary, which you might do a bit later on. That's a good method. It doesn't matter how you take notes, but I think for most people taking notes is useful. And also have a method of finding them. I think it's probably most useful when you're listening to a lecture and when you're finding out about assessment. But I think you need to make sure that you're confident at taking notes and that you've got a good way of referring back to them. So academic writing is scary for a lot of people who haven't studied for a while, and also you might think, well, it might be on your undergraduate degree that you really did a lot of writing. I feel that this postgraduate diploma has an access course, and the access course is the Sources of Knowledge online course. The Sources of Knowledge is often an early course in your programme, and I would recommend you choosing it early on because it just gets you back into studying. It might seem hard and irrelevant, but by the end of it, you can write an essay, and that is useful for the rest of your time on the programme. When you're doing academic writing, it's really important to write a plan. And every course you go on, the teacher will give you an opportunity to hand in a piece of work in advance of the deadline. So a formative assessment that we will give you feedback on pretty quickly so that you can then use that when you write your assignment. And I always like students in the first few courses to send in plans because it tells me that you're going in the right direction. And I'd like to know, your plan outline where you're intending to go. You might also have a mentor at work that you'd like to share your plan with, which is fine. And quite often it might be someone who's been through the course recently. But don't rely on their work, but they will have an idea about the sort of things you should be writing. One of the things about writing at master's level is that you really have to put an awful lot more references in than perhaps you did at undergraduate level or on initial teacher education. Every assertion of fact has to be backed up by your reading. So that means that almost every sentence you write, at the end of the sentence, it will be open brackets, author name, comma, date, close brackets, full stop. You know what I mean? If you read any article, you will see that's what happens. Major statements of fact towards the first part of your essay will perhaps have 3 references in. So it will be like a statement of fact, which is generally known, open brackets, author name, comma, date, semicolon, author name, comma, date, semicolon, author name, comma, date, close brackets, full stop. Now, the punctuation is important. Sounds stupid to be worried about punctuation, but it makes a lot of difference to what your references will look like. If you look at any academic piece of work, like a chapter or an article, you will see that the early sentences in the piece usually have a lot of references because they're stating something that's very generally known. And then as you go through the assignment, you'll have maybe sentences with just 1 reference at the end. So this is why you have to be organised about your reading, because you can't just say, I do this, or I think that. We're not really interested in that. We want to know what is happening out there in the world of deaf education or visual impairment research. How do you know? What proof have you got? And what sort of evidence do you think that is? Is it good or is it not so good? So you're going to be using references at key points in an essay, basically all the way through. You're going to be using most of you will want to use the Harvard referencing system. And if you don't know how to use that system or you've forgotten the details, there's quite a nice website which is run by the Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. I like it because it tells you how to reference anything. And sometimes, it does get quite tricky to know how to reference things. So this is the Anglia Ruskin University Harvard System website, and it tells you what happens if there's 2 or 3 authors for a work. How do I write that in the body of the assignment, and how do I write it in the reference list? So this is the reference list, and this is the body of the article of the assignment that you're writing. Let's say you're reading a chapter out of a book which is edited. How do you write about that in the body of the assignment and how do you put it in the reference list. So Anglia Ruskin University has helped us out a lot here. You can reference anything, talks, bus tickets, you know, like basically it's a very good site to use if you get stuck on referencing. Another site which I quite like is called Cite Them Right. I thought it was going to work then. Let's just see. This is on the University of Edinburgh site. Yeah. Cite Them Right tells you, similar to the University of Anglia Ruskin, it tells you about how to set out references. And there's a tutorial for you which is online as well. Learn how to reference anything. So I don't know, some people might have used a different system for referencing. You might have used something called APA, which is more used by psychologists. I don't think it matters too much so long as you're consistent. And you know, we've looked already in the library and DiscoverEd and on Google Scholar, you can actually export citations quite quickly now, according to your preferred system. So some people worry about writing essays. Are they allowed to use the word I? Yes, you are allowed to use the word I. We're working in the area of social sciences, and in social sciences, your positionality matters. Who you are is quite important, because as a person who's working in the disciplines of, let's say, education, sociology, psychology, it does matter that you are a real person, you are a real teacher. So don't feel worried about using I. When you go onto a course, a Learn course, you will see that the assessment criteria are always there. They're on the Learn site. They're in the course handbook for that course. And when you do an assignment, you should look first of all at the assessment criteria. In all the courses on the deaf education pathway, I have grade-related assessment criteria, which means it tells you exactly how to get an A, B, C, D, etc. for each of the criteria. And also, this is where we need to look at the yellow handbook, the postgraduate taught one for the whole School of Education. Do you remember I said pages 12 onwards are important? We have a method of assessing called General Postgraduate Marking Criteria, and it looks at all of these features. First of all, do you understand the ideas, the concepts? Secondly, do you use the literature widely? Thirdly, can you critically reflect on theory and practice? You know about practice, you're doing it. The theory comes from the course, and they relate to each other. Sometimes they match, sometimes they don't match. This is where your critical reflection comes in. Can you apply theory to practice? So, for example, the theory says, for deaf education, that we should identify deaf babies at birth, we should have them aided by 3 months, and we should start early work with the family by 6 months. That is the theory, and it's based on a very careful look at children's language development in the early years in speech or sign. The practice might be something very different, especially for some families, as my recent research on families living on a low income has shown. So theory and practice often are at odds. And so that is the sort of reflection we want to see in your assignments. You know about what's happening on the ground. And this is why I find reading essays so great, because I find out what's happening on the ground and you relate that to what you've read about on the course. And then planning and implementation of a research or investigation, that isn't always relevant to every course, but for some courses it is. Like the Deaf Studies course, which is on this semester, is a mini research project, very mini, but you will be you'll be collecting some data. And then lastly, constructing academic discourse, which is how you write assignments. Are you confident at having an argument that goes right the way through your assignment? Are you confident at referencing? Okay, so those are the criteria which we use to mark all assignments. And if you look now into the yellow book, on page 12, you will see the grade related. Have you got one, Elizabeth? Yeah, you're right. I think everyone's got one. For example, knowledge and understanding of concepts, which is at the bottom of page 12. You can see how to get an A and you can see how to get an E. I'll just talk about the A one. The assignment shows that the student has understood the main concepts and theories dealt with in the course without any misunderstanding and has been able to integrate this understanding into a coherent framework. Okay, so you don't just understand the ideas, you can put them into, you can explain them into a coherent way which makes sense. Knowledge and use of the literature, the next criteria. A, the student has used most of the key references in the reading list, key references being important. It doesn't say all of them because they're not all going to be absolutely relevant, but most of them, without necessarily referring to every item on the list, and in addition drawn on other sources, and has integrated the ideas from all this material into a coherent and analytical framework. Now that is hard really. It's like saying that you can read a lot, you can understand it, and you can put it together in a way which discusses it well. That is that you're looking at things from several viewpoints. I'll just look at another one, application of theory to practice. The implications of theory for policy and practice are thoroughly discussed and their limitations fully specified. That is quite important. If we know from theory that newborn screening should lead to the very efficient diagnosis, aiding early start with languages, and in practice that doesn't happen, well, we can think, what does that mean for those children? They're going to have periods without any language input. What does that mean for their later school achievement? It's disastrous. So relating theory to practice is a really important part of this programme. We want to hear your viewpoints. And when you write an assignment, your line manager doesn't know what it says. You're dealing with the literature. You're understanding the field. We want to know what you're thinking about that. So I just want to stop there a minute. Do you understand what I'm meaning about the marking criteria and how we mark your assignments? Usually on the assignments you will see, I'll just go into one that I've done recently on Learn. I'm just going to show you what marking sometimes looks like. So, because it's all electronic, you will upload your assignment through something called Turnitin, which you'll find out about on your first course. So I'll just show you some examples of what it looks like when you get your feedback back. This is a placement course for the right, I'm going to go into this random person's assignment. Just go down through the rubbish till we start the actual assignment. This is a placement course, so there's quite a lot of stuff at the beginning. Right, now you can see there are blue bubble comments, which are particularly things which often concentrate on academic writing. You see, there's quite a lot of individual comments around. Sometimes asking you more questions to reflect on, sometimes giving you information about academic writing, but they're individualized comments. And then over here, you can see general feedback. And the feedback is organized by the marking criteria, which are in the handbook. So quite a bit of feedback you get for each assignment. Okay, so have you had essays like this before? Have you done it like this before? Did you used to give them in on paper and get them back on paper with notes from your tutor? Okay, that's all gone. So it's going to be blue bubbles for the individual comments about your writing, and then general comments on the right-hand panel about how you're doing for each of the criteria. It's meant to be helpful to you in the sense that next essay you can think about what you've done and think, all right, I could actually up my game and go for a B, because we show you the criteria, and so you know what you can go for. Try to improve your marks. Now, plagiarism. Plagiarism is a rather unpleasant word for what often starts out as bad scholarship. When you're new to studying, you sometimes don't keep very good records of where you found ideas, and without realising may copy and paste things into your assignment. However, we can find out very quickly whether you're doing that, because every time you upload an assignment, we run Turnitin, you can run it as well, and you can see the parts which have been copied from other sources through Turnitin. this does allow you to get the chance, if you finish your assignment a week before it's due in, it gives you the chance to check that and to make sure that you haven't done that without mistake. I don't think many people deliberately set out to copy. It's more that you've got a lot to do and you haven't always kept very good records of where you've got ideas from. So if you've got an idea from a book, don't quote it. Just don't quote. At postgraduate level, we hardly quote. At undergraduate level, a lot of people use quotes. At postgraduate level, we want to know your summary of what you've read and your view of what you've read. Okay, so that means that you are less likely to plagiarize because you're not even trying to quote. You're trying to summarize and critically summarize. So there is a very useful video on online, which I go into now. With any luck.
Presentation coaches students regarding looking up their grade and checking their papers for plagiarism. If the paper has already been submitted, but it's not past the due date yet,
hang on, I'm going to get it.
Check your originality report. Student can go into course content, into the folder where the paper is,
Where is it?
and scroll down to the Turnitin assignment. You can click on View Assignment, then
There we
My
are.
Submissions. The originality report will appear here. There's 15% on that. You can click and open up that report in another window. Now, what you'll notice is that I've already graded the student's paper, and so you've got some comments over here. What if it is past the due date and you're not just checking the paper for plagiarism, but you're actually looking at your grade and wanting to know the comments? Well, you can come in the same way through course content and click on the assignment and then click into this graded area, either on the grade mark comments or the similarity in depth.
Okay, I'm not going to go through all of that now, but if you follow the link from here, you can get to quite a lot of nice videos about what Turnitin does. And basically what Turnitin does is it allows you, oh, that was a mistake. It allows you to check whether by mistake you might have copied something. So Turnitin allows you to have a look to see whether you've, without realising, copied things, and so before you actually get to the deadline, you can fix it up. If we find that there has been copying and you haven't realised that you've done it perhaps, or maybe you have realised you've done it, then you will get, depending on how serious it is, you will get a warning email from your course tutor, but if it's serious amount, then it will get referred through the school to the college, and it can lead to 0% for the course. So you want to avoid this, and the way to avoid it is to be very careful about keeping your notes, so that you know that when you write in the assignment, it's your own ideas, but you're referencing properly other people's ideas. So if you decide to write about, in Deaf Education, about the 1, 3, 6 month benchmarks, you don't just say this is your own idea, you reference it. You make sure at the end of that sentence there is a link to something in the reference list. Okay, does anyone want to ask about that?
I want to say a couple of things about it. Plagiarism can happen even with your own work, and sometimes students go through courses.
Just hold on.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it can happen in your own work. So as students go through courses, and sometimes they can see that there's overlaps between things, that they will reference things or use the words that they've already used in a previous assignment. And the absolute devil here is cut and paste or copy and paste. You can't submit work that you've already submitted for marking in another assignment. That's self-plagiarism. And that's exactly the same thing that will happen. And through Turnitin, it will notice that you have copied your own work. And that is not allowed. And unfortunately, we have had students who have done that with no intent of being, of badness or doing the wrong thing. But then we have to make a referral on. So please don't copy your own work either, unless you're going to reference it. But again, it wouldn't really be seen as good academic writing to use great swathes of work that you've already submitted for marking. So just to be aware of that. The second thing I wanted to say as well is please make sure that it's your own work that you are doing. We've had, I certainly had a conversation with our external examiner, Sometimes people go back and ask their mentors for a bit of advice. That's great. That's what we want you to do. But please don't undertake tasks with others who are qualified and then pass it off as your own work. Because again, you should be stating in your assignment that you have had help. That's not really what we want. We want you to do the tasks yourself. And even if you're not very good at it, it gives you lots to write about and reflect on what you need to do to improve. So just 2 small things there.
Thanks. Has anyone got any questions about academic writing, referencing and plagiarism? Because I know it's a concern for a lot of people when they start again. Elizabeth and I are here to help you. And the formative assessment you get on each course is meant to give you some feedback. So I don't want it to feel like a threatening situation. You can build your academic writing skills as you go through the programme. Anyone got anything they'd like to ask about that? Okay, well, there'll be lots more opportunities on the course to discuss those things. Now, I'm finishing off fairly soon, you'll be glad to know. Many students, when they come back to studying, may have a disability or an impairment or a specific learning difficulty. And if you suspect this, then I think it's a good idea to follow it up early on and to go to the Student Disability Services. It's in the main library in George Square on the 3rd floor. You can make an appointment to go through the website. You don't need, you first of all make the appointment, then you go. And of course, because the university follows the Equality Act, we will make reasonable adjustments for you. Some of those adjustments are already standard, like for example, the reading lists have to be up in advance, the PowerPoint should be up a few days in advance at least, key terms can be up in advance as well. So some of you will be applying for disabled students allowance, which means that you might be getting quite a lot of support and the Student Disability Service will do the assessment. When they finish that, we get it through as course tutors and we know what sort of adjustments need to be made. And the Student Disability Service may bring in support staff which are specialists. So please do that. I found a student last year who had dyslexia and it really didn't show up with coursework, but then there was one course she did which had a test in it, an exam, 10% was worth, and suddenly it was clear that things were not as they should be. So she went down to the Student Disability Service and got an assessment, and she was quite relieved to find this out actually, because she'd been putting a huge amount of work into all her coursework and she didn't know. So that means this week she's coming along to do a resit of the test with the 50% time already sorted out, and she's really quite pleased that she's discovered it, but it's best to discover it early on. So finally, I hope you enjoy your course, your programme. If it's about the course, you contact the course tutor. If it's about personal issues, you contact the personal tutor. And as Elizabeth and I have explained, we're actually both in many cases, so you're going to get to know us quite well. There might come a time when you don't want your personal tutor to be the same person who's teaching you for a course. And Elizabeth and I have got an arrangement, which we occasionally have needed to use, where we will swap. So that like if you've got a dispute with me because you're not happy about the way I've treated you for some reason, hope that doesn't happen, and you didn't want to see me as your personal tutor anymore, I would pass you to Elizabeth for the period to sort out any personal issues, and then the same way, the other way around. We actually don't need to use that. I've used it once in 13 years, but I mean, it's a possible solution. And, you know, you can imagine that sometimes it might get a little bit too much seeing the course tutor and the personal tutor. Marie Hamilton is the secretary who you met at the beginning, and used the inclusive education email to ask her anything about administrative issues. Natasha, you probably won't need to contact Natasha about anything, but if you really can't see a way around it and you can't get an answer out of any of us, particularly Elizabeth and me, you could go to Natasha because she has an overview of the programme. We do have external examiners as well. Our current Deaf Education external examiner is Elizabeth Matthews from Dublin City University, and our current VI external examiner is Zhao Rowe from Bristol City Council, and those over the next few years they will probably change. I think Zhao is probably finishing. You'll have a new one. Yeah. So the external examiner is someone you might meet when they come in the summer usually. So that's all I'd like to say. Now, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask about what they're expecting on the course, or how you're feeling? Do you know what your next job is going to be? Filling in that form. Do you feel okay? I know it's been quite a lot of talking. I suppose I'll just give you a chance to talk to your next door neighbour for a minute, just in case you've got any questions that are a bit easier to ask if you've talked to your neighbour for a minute. And have a quick chat to your neighbour about anything that you think you might like to ask about. Yes, like those people at home, which is I think 4 people who are watching just now. 6, oh that's good. Please text questions now. This is a good moment. Yes, that's okay, don't worry. I think the main thing that's gone wrong today has been Holly Skyping in or Zooming in. It just didn't work. I'm very sorry about that. Andrea is, there's 2 tutors. Andrea is back at work. Andrea and Holly are team teaching inclusive pedagogy, and they're very much looking forward to meet you next Friday if you're taking inclusive pedagogy. Inclusive pedagogy is a course which you start on the 20th of September. So if anyone chooses that course for this semester, you'll be meeting Holly in the flesh and the other co-tutor, Andrea, and you'll meet them again in November at the very end, and the rest will be online. It's really a nice course, but I'm afraid I didn't sell it very well because of the technology, the fact that the computer didn't have sound and other basic things like that, which I couldn't really believe. No. That was where I went wrong. I assumed that it would have.
So how are you meant to play videos then?
You can play videos, you can't use it for... It's a disaster. Okay, you've had a little chat. Any questions that you'd like to ask about things? Okay, just before you go, I'd just quite like to talk round the table with the deaf education people, just to talk about your mentors, just to make sure you're all, I've sort of got eye contact with you. I think we'll stop there on the live stream. So that's it for now. And I look forward to seeing everyone soon, face to face.